You know that feeling when you're walking down a familiar staircase in the dark and you think there's one more step, but there isn't?
Oh, yeah. The
Right. Your
worst.
foot just falls through empty air. For a split second, your stomach completely drops, your arms flail around, and panic sets in because the solid ground your brain absolutely expected to be there just isn't.
It is a terrifying, visceral little moment. It's that sudden, jarring realization that the physical world is, not actually structured the way your internal map assumed it was.
Exactly. And welcome to today's Morning Roundup edition of our Daily Deep Dive. The reason I bring up that missing step feeling is because looking through today's stack of sources, that exact sensation of sudden weightlessness kept coming up.
Over and over again.
Yeah, but applied to our entire society. We're digging through a massive, really provocative stack of daily reading to uncover the hidden threads connecting our world right now. And today's theme, we're calling it The Modern Squeeze and the Search for Solid Ground.
I mean, it's a highly appropriate title for what we are looking at. Our mission today is to explore exactly how the modern world is shifting under our feet. We're talking technological disruption, a frankly staggering demographic collapse, and deep cultural fragmentation.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. But more importantly, we are going to look at the fascinating and sometimes intensely controversial ways different thinkers are proposing we actually survive it.
Now, just looking at today's stack, we are touching some massive third rails here. We have perspectives ranging from right-wing environmentalism and deep orthodox theology, all the way to intense sociological critiques of modern media and gender dynamics.
Yep, it is all over the map.
And just to be absolutely clear up front,
Hmm.
our goal today isn't to tell you who is right or who is wrong. We're not taking sides or endorsing these views. We are strictly here to map the territory.
Yeah.
We want to lay out these wildly different arguments side by side, unpack the logic behind them, and basically let you figure out exactly where you stand on them.
Exactly. We are here to synthesize the arguments, not champion them. And honestly, the best place to start understanding this collective missing step feeling is by looking at why the ground feels like it's vanishing in the first place.
Which brings us to this brilliant sociological concept.
Right, from Peter Berger. We came across this in an essay by Paul Vanderklay. It's this concept called the heretical imperative.
I mean, I've heard the term heretical imperative before, and it sounds incredibly dramatic, right? Like something straight out of the Inquisition.
It really does.
But if I understand it correctly, it essentially means that in the modern world, even if you desperately want to be traditional, you still have to consciously choose it. Like you can't just inherit your worldview anymore.
That is precisely it. For the vast majority of human history, people inherited what sociologists call a plausibility structure.
A plausibility structure.
Okay. Yeah, think of it as an invisible scaffolding of beliefs, a shared social order that you were just born into. Like if you were born in a 14th century village, you didn't wake up at 18 and decide what your religion was or what your career would be or what constituted a good life.
It was just decided for you. It was the water you swam in. You didn't even question it.
Right, it was the solid ground under your feet. But modernity pulls the plug on the pool. Modernity, with its endless communication and globalization, forces everyone to be a heretic. And we should clarify, the original Greek root of the word heresy is heresis, which literally just means choice.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so modernity forces us to choose our beliefs from this massive global marketplace of ideas.
And the essay gives this incredibly vivid, relatable example to explain how this actually feels on a personal level. It describes a young woman who grows up in a very tight-knit, traditional Mormon community. She has a completely intact plausibility structure.
Everything is laid out for her.
Right. Everything makes sense. But then she goes away to a secular college, and she essentially gets, as the writer puts it, one-shotted by pluralism.
Which is such a great phrase.
It really is. She is suddenly surrounded by dozens of completely different, totally viable ways to live. And she realizes there are many different competing truths out there.
And the psychological impact of that is profound. It leads to this intense, heartbreaking friction when she goes back home for, say, Thanksgiving.
Because she can't unsee the marketplace of choices.
Exactly. But her family still firmly resides inside that original, unquestioned structure. They literally cannot understand each other's reality anymore.
So we are all forced to make these choices. We have to be heretics. But what's really interesting to me is how we actually go about making them. Like if we're handed this massive menu of worldviews, how do we pick?
Which brings us to the media analysis piece we reviewed called Screenwashed. It looks at how we are subtly conditioned to choose certain things off that menu. And they do this brilliant breakdown of the 1998 movie Pleasantville.
Oh man, Pleasantville. It's a perfect case study for this.
It really is. So in Pleasantville, the traditional order things like duty, responsibility, sexual restraint, all of that is literally depicted in dreary, boring black and white.
Right, and then rebellion, intense personal pleasure, hedonism, all of that is depicted in vibrant, beautiful Technicolor.
Yes. The visual metaphor is doing the heavy lifting for the moral argument. The writer identifies this as the aesthetic halo effect.
And that concept makes so much sense when you really look at it. The aesthetic halo effect is this cognitive bias where we're basically wired to think that if something looks cinematic or beautiful or high budget, it must be morally virtuous.
The people with the prettiest aesthetics must be the good guys.
Exactly. There's this specific scene in the movie where a character paints a giant pornographic mural on the side of a building, right in plain sight of the town's children. Now, in reality, most reasonable people would object to that.
Of course they would. You'd have town hall meetings, protests, the whole 9 yards.
But in the movie, the mural is painted in these stunning, bright Technicolor hues against a depressing gray background. So the aesthetic halo effect completely tricks the audience into cheering for the mural simply because the picture is pretty and the people objecting to it look so boring and gray.
It perfectly illustrates how a culture that claims to have completely done away with rigid rules actually just replaces them with new ones. They use aesthetics to condition what you view as good.
So we think we are freely choosing our beliefs in this modern marketplace,
Mm-hmm.
but our desires are actually being heavily shaped by whoever controls the aesthetics.
Precisely.
Okay, let me synthesize this. If modernity is a restaurant, the heretical imperative means we're no longer served a set family meal, we're handed a menu with 10,000 items. But if the menu is designed using the aesthetic halo effect, aren't we just being subtly manipulated into picking the junk food just because the picture looks better?
That is a fantastic analogy. But, and this is a big but, while we are busy debating the cultural menu, there is a massive structural tsunami coming that threatens to wash away the restaurant entirely.
You're talking about the technological squeeze, specifically AI.
Yes, artificial intelligence. We reviewed deep dives from Right Response and some commentary from Asmongold TV, and they detail how the AI revolution is not just, a neat tool for generating funny pictures or summarizing emails. It is an existential economic shift.
Because of how it actually works, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
AI is mastering complex pattern recognition.
And so much of our modern knowledge economy is really just pattern recognition disguised as expertise.
You hit the nail on the head. A radiologist diagnosing medical x-rays, that's recognizing patterns. A corporate lawyer reviewing thousands of pages of contract discovery, pattern recognition, even high-quality animation, which we are seeing generated by platforms like Runway AI, relies on predicting visual patterns.
It's wild. AI is beginning to outperform humans in all of these fields, and the predictions we looked at are genuinely staggering.
They really are. The analysts suggest that AI could eliminate so many knowledge-based jobs that up to 60% of people simply won't have productive, meaningful work available to them.
60%. And the Right Response commentary makes this wild prediction that AI might actually force hardcore conservatives to embrace some form of universal basic income or even socialism.
Because, practically speaking, you can't let 60% of a willing population starve in the streets without facing a violent revolution.
Right. They paint this highly plausible, yet totally dystopian picture where society devolves into a sort of techno-feudalism. You end up ruled by these high-tech mafia families, they say, think House Bezos and House Musk, who control the algorithms that run everything.
And the only thing keeping them in check is an equally massive, bloated government distributing survival rations.
It's terrifying. And look, it's an economic squeeze that bleeds directly into a demographic collapse. I mean, it's incredibly hard to build a life or start a family if you're economically stranded. The marriage statistics we pulled from the Asmongold commentary are just mind-blowing.
The drop is insane.
In 1975, 91% of women in America were married by age 30. Today, it is 25%.
And for men, the projections are even more stark. They project it could drop to 16% for men by 2025. You are looking at a massive, unprecedented drop-off.
Entire generations of young people are just completely opting out of family formation, which is, traditionally the bedrock of a stable society.
And this brings up a fascinating, if highly controversial, point about why this alienation is happening in the first place. We read an essay from Based Camp regarding workplace and institutional dynamics, and they propose what they call great feminization theory.
Yeah, that's a very provocative framing.
It is. The core argument is that as society and modern corporate workplaces have evolved, they have entirely adopted a female typical method of conflict resolution.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of that.
Okay.
Because the essay argues that historically, male typical conflict resolution involves direct confrontation. It's about telling unkind truths to each other bluntly.
Right, getting it out in the open.
And the theory suggests that while this directness hurts feelings in the short term, it forces a dysfunctional system to quickly adapt and become functional. But they claim modern systems favor indirect reputational conflict resolution. Things like HR departments, passive aggression, consensus building, can kind lies.
And the argument is that while this indirect method protects feelings and maintains surface level harmony, it actually allows underlying rot to fester. It makes systems deeply dysfunctional, slow to adapt, and ultimately incredibly hostile and alienating to men who feel they just can't navigate the unspoken rules of reputational conflict.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting for me. I have to ask, is this causality backwards? Are we blaming corporate workplace dynamics for what is actually a massive technological issue?
We need to.
Isn't it more likely that the internet, with its isolating algorithms and endless digital aesthetic halos, is directly responsible for these gender wars, and the fact that an entire generation is just opting out of marriage?
I mean, it is almost certainly a feedback loop, right? The technology isolates us, which breaks down our social skills, which makes the workplace harder to navigate, which drives us further into digital isolation. It all feeds into itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the vital question for our roundup today is, how are people actually reacting to this squeeze? When the culture is fragmented, the economy is threatened by AI, and demographics are collapsing, people don't just sit still.
Right, they look for new ways to forge a path.
Exactly. And right now, we are seeing a profound push toward extreme localism and physical roots.
Which leads us to a really unexpected movement we reviewed today, right-wing environmentalism.
Yeah.
We looked at an essay by a writer named Richard IV, and it offers a totally different lens on ecology.
It really flips the script.
It does. Usually we associate environmentalism with a left-wing view that idealizes a victimized, fragile Mother Earth that needs to be saved from humanity. But this traditionalist view sees nature completely differently. Nature is beautiful, yes, but it is also deeply dangerous, wild, and overwhelming.
The goal in this worldview isn't to save a helpless victim. It is to harmonize yourself with a force that is much bigger than you. There is a deep romantic urge here to reconnect with what the writer calls Deep England or the Shire.
It's a deliberate strategy to ground yourself in physical reality, basically to escape the high-octane anxiety of the digital world. And it gets incredibly specific.
Oh yeah, highly specific.
The writer talks about literally walking into the deep woods and placing your bare hands on the trunk of an ancient oak tree, just to absorb its low, slow frequencies. It's about feeling something real. And it extends to their moral stance on food, too.
Right, there is a fierce opposition to corporate factory farming, but not just for the usual health reason.
No, they advocate for local, grass-fed beef as a way of bringing your body into spiritual alignment with the natural local order of things.
It is entirely about planting deep physical roots in the soil. But then we reviewed another perspective from a writer named Dale Partridge, who advocates for planting roots not just in the soil, but aggressively in the culture. He advocates for a concept he provocatively calls Christian colonization.
This one is intense. Partridge argues that the modern concept of multiculturalism is an objective failure. He believes that throwing completely different plausibility structures into the same geographic area inevitably leads to civil war.
Because those different groups are always going to vie for the power of the government to enforce their specific worldview.
Right. So his solution is radical retreat and entrenchment. He argues that traditional Christians need to completely stop living transient modern lifestyles, like start moving across the country every 3 years for a slightly better job or better weather.
Instead, he calls for committing multi-generationally to a single location to build intentional Christian boroughs.
It is the ultimate cultural fortress. He urges his listeners to stop sending their daughters to secular universities where they'll just get one-shotted by pluralism. He tells them to stop letting them go to nightclubs, advocating instead for a highly protective, patriarchal family structure.
And he tackles the controversy of the word colonization head-on. He cites historical research by Jeff Flynn to argue that Western lands weren't inherently stolen in some unique moral failing, but were acquired through the standard, brutal human history of treaties and purchases.
Yeah, he specifically cites the $15 million treaty that acquired the American Southwest.
Exactly. The underlying philosophy Partridge is pushing is that cultural neutrality is a total myth. He believes that if you don't proactively shape and colonize your local community with your values, you aren't achieving neutrality. You are simply waiting for another ideology to come in and colonize you.
Okay, let's step back and look at these solutions. Partridge wants us to build a cultural fortress to keep the world out, while Richard wants us to go plant an organic garden in the Shire. But practically speaking, can you actually build an insular borough anymore? You can pull your kids out of the university to protect their plausibility structure, but they still have smartphones in their pockets. AI and infinite aesthetic halos can penetrate the thickest walls of any cultural fortress.
Which is exactly the critical flaw that the final set of sources in our stack addresses. If the modern technological squeeze can penetrate any external wall, then building a fortress is basically useless.
So what's the alternative?
The only viable solution is to build internal armor. And this brings us to the profound theological sources we reviewed, tackling the idea of discipleship in an age of total information overload.
Yeah, we looked at a piece from Dr. Patitsis via Patristic Nectar, and he lays out this incredible Socratic method for teaching and discipleship. He argues that modern education completely fails because it skips straight to telling people abstract secrets or exposing their logical flaws.
Instead, he says human psychology requires a strict order. Show them, train them, tell them secrets, and critically, showing them means you have to start with beauty.
You have to inspire a visceral desire for the destination before you can ever demand the grueling discipline required for the journey.
Exactly. You cannot argue someone into a new plausibility structure. You have to attract them to it.
And there's this incredible emotional story in the text to back this up. It's about a renowned Greek Orthodox monk, Elder Porphyrios, and a young teenage girl named Effie.
Oh, this story is amazing.
Effie is deeply misunderstood by her family. She is furious at the world, and she decides she is going to take her own life. She is standing alone in a field with a bottle of highly toxic weed killer in her hand.
And just as she's about to drink it, this monk, who she's never even met, walks out of the forest.
And pay attention to what he doesn't do. He doesn't yell at her. He doesn't start quoting theological rules or deploying logical facts about the value of life.
He doesn't argue with her at all.
Right. He calls her by her name, and he simply describes the overwhelming, radiant beauty of heaven to her. He paints this incredible picture and then says, "Take my hand and let's go to heaven together."
And she drops the bottle of poison.
He saved her life entirely by leading with beauty.
It is the perfect illustration of internal armor. You cannot argue someone out of deep modern despair with spreadsheets and facts. You have to draw them out with beauty. From there, the sources move to the concept of maintaining that internal armor actively.
Right. Freshman Trifon talks about wearing his traditional monastic cassock in public.
But he emphasizes he doesn't wear it to signal to others. He wears it for himself as a physical piece of armor against the spiritual battles and anxieties of the modern world. He views this current life merely as a way stop, a temporary transition point.
And realizing it's a way stop completely changes how you interact with all this anxiety we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Father Spiriton actually takes that internal armor a step further by defining what true worship actually looks like in practice.
He warns that true worship isn't about charismatic emotional displays.
Yeah, like speaking in tongues or falling over in the aisles. It is about the quiet, brutal, active practice of virtues, doing good works, seeking repentance.
But the most striking part of his message is his warning about condemnation. He says explicitly that if you harbor hatred or condemnation in your heart for any individual or group, if you attempt to limit God's love or mercy to only your specific faction, then you don't actually know God at all.
It is a radical call for internal purity over external posturing. And this all culminates beautifully in our final essay from Bound, which focuses on the Virgin Mary as the ultimate radical blueprint for navigating chaos.
Think about it. Our modern world is absolutely obsessed with forceful, aggressive control.
Whether it's the technological domination of AI, the cultural domination of colonization, or the endless ideological battles over gender in workplaces, everyone is trying to grasp control of the steering wheel.
But Mary represents the ultimate power of receptivity. The theological phrase the essay uses is, creation is incarnation, meaning God pressing the infinite eternal reality into the finite physical world.
And Mary's fiat, her response of, "Let it be done," was the actual catalyst for the world. And we should clarify for everyone, a Fiat in this context isn't a small Italian car.
Yeah, definitely not.
It means an active, willing consent. It's a profound yes to reality. She didn't conquer, she received.
Exactly. It positions receptivity and willing participation as a vastly higher, more powerful, and more liberating state of being than the desperate, white-knuckled grasping for control that characterizes so much of our modern anxiety.
You stop trying to hack the universe and start consenting to your role in it.
Well said.
Okay, I hear that, and it's beautiful. But I have to be honest, I have a genuine sense of existential dread about this. Like if I'm staring down the barrel of an AI algorithm taking my job tomorrow, or I'm looking at housing prices and realizing I might never afford to start a family, is seeking out beauty and practicing receptivity really enough?
It's a fair question.
Or is that just spiritual escapism? Are we just closing our eyes and listening to nice music while the ship goes down?
It is a totally valid fear, but what these theological sources are arguing is that if you let the panic force you to lose your internal grounding, if you abandon your soul, your virtue, and your ability to perceive beauty just to fight for economic scraps, then surviving the shift doesn't actually matter.
Wow.
You've survived, but you've lost the very essence of what makes you human. You've just become a machine fighting other machines.
Okay, that brings us perfectly to our morning roundup synthesis. We are living through the terrifying collapse of our old plausibility structures. The ground really is missing beneath our feet.
AI is actively squeezing our economic future by mastering pattern recognition. Modern media is using the aesthetic halo effect to artificially rewire our desires.
And the data shows family formation is plummeting into the ground. In response to this chaos, voices are telling us to physically root ourselves in raw nature and local communities, and to spiritually root ourselves in ancient beauty and unshakable internal virtue.
The diagnosis across all these sources is a terminal crisis of meaning and structure. And the proposed prescriptions range from building physical community fortresses to developing bulletproof internal spiritual armor.
So as always on the Morning Roundup, we want to leave you with practical, actionable steps. How do you apply this deep dive to your actual life today? Here are 3 things you can do based on today's sources.
Number 1, audit your plausibility structures.
Yes. Look closely at the media you consume on your phone today. Ask yourself if you are being aesthetically haloed. Are you adopting a belief, buying a product, or cheering for a behavior simply because the picture looks pretty or the production value is cinematic? Try to separate the aesthetic from the moral truth.
Number 2, plant roots. Stop treating your local physical community like a hotel you are just passing through until something better comes along. Cultivate a tangible, physical relationship with your environment.
That might mean literally going outside and putting your hands on an oak tree. It might mean buying local food to support a regional farmer, or it might mean committing to a local group or church for the long haul, rather than leaving the moment interpersonal friction gets uncomfortable.
And number 3, lead with beauty. If you want to change someone's mind today or pull a friend out of a dark, anxious place, do not start with a barrage of facts, logic, or secret knowledge.
Start by showing them something genuinely beautiful. Inspire their desire for the destination first.
As always, we highly encourage you to check out the original sources we've linked for yourself. Go deeper into these incredibly diverse, challenging topics to see the full context of these arguments and decide what you really believe.
Absolutely, go read them.
And we want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to mull over today as you go about your business. If artificial intelligence soon perfectly replicates human logic, human art, and human conversation, will that terrifying mirror finally force us to prove what it actually means to have a soul? Or will we just happily and quietly accept our roles as well-fed pets to our new algorithmic kings?
That is heavy, but it is exactly the kind of question we need to be asking when we feel that missing step in the dark. Keep your eyes open, watch out for the aesthetic halos, and try to find some solid ground today. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.